Now we're going to look at an example involving a polynomial and a limit at infinity. In this example, the limit as x goes to infinity of x cubed minus 6x squared plus x is what we're taking a look at. Now, let's think about this. Let's go ahead and try to plug in infinity again. So we have infinity cubed minus 6 times infinity squared plus infinity. Well, this certainly looks like we've got infinity minus infinity plus infinity, which equals, you guessed it, infinity. Well, remember that we said that this right here is illegal. You can't do this. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at a process by which we can simplify this. So this is actually not correct here. So let's go ahead and cross this out. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look. What we're going to do is we're going to factor out the highest power. In this case, the biggest power being x cubed. So what we're going to do is we're going to factor out x cubed from everything, or in essence divide everything by x cubed. So if I were to factor out x cubed, I might write this. Okay, so then I've got, let's see here, x cubed over x cubed minus 6x squared over x cubed plus x over x cubed. So let's go ahead and simplify here. So factoring out, I have the limit as x goes to infinity of x cubed on the outside, and then on the inside I would have 1 minus, well, x squared over x cubed is simply 6 over x, and x over x cubed is simply 1 over x squared. So I've got something that looks like this. Now I want you to recall from a previous theorem that these things right here go to 0. So that's actually going to be 0 there. So I'm going to write 0. Alright. Well, it seems that we're just left with x cubed times 1. And actually, what we're going to do is simply write, well, the limit as x goes to infinity of x cubed. Now, recall again that I told you that it is illegal to plug in infinity, but that's actually what we're going to do at this point. So we're going to end up with infinity cubed, which is just infinity. So we're left with, in this case, positive infinity as our answer. Now, what we're going to do is take a look at a theorem that will actually help us simplify this process even more. So here's the theorem for any polynomial p of x. The limit as x goes to plus or minus infinity of p of x is simply the limit of the highest power term of that polynomial function. So in this example below, labeled example 3, as x goes to infinity of x cubed minus 6x squared plus x, well, again, going back to this theorem, we're looking for the highest power. Well, what's the highest power in this polynomial here? Well, it's that right there, x cubed. And that's the one we were just looking at. So in essence, all we have to do is take the limit as x goes to infinity of x cubed. And again, we end up with infinity cubed, which is just infinity. In this case, positive infinity. It's very important to make this distinction. Okay, so let's take a look at one more example. So here is our next example. The limit as x goes to negative infinity of 11x squared minus 2x cubed plus x. Okay, once again, following from the previous, we're going to look for the highest power. and here we find it, negative 2x cubed. So in essence, what we're going to write is the limit as x goes to negative infinity, in this case, of negative 2x cubed. So we're going to plug in infinity, and this is going to help us out greatly because we're going to determine, well, if this goes to infinity, period, well, does it go to positive infinity or negative infinity? And here's what's going to happen. When we plug in that infinity, we have negative 2 times negative infinity cubed. Okay, well, let's think about this for a second. Following our order of operations, we'd have to do the exponents first in this case. We have negative infinity cubed. Well, if you have some negative number cubed, you end up with a negative number. Okay, so this right here is going to work out to be a negative number. Alright, so we basically then have, when we do our next step in multiplication, a negative times a negative. And of course, a negative times a negative is positive. So this is actually going to go to plus or positive infinity here. Okay, so that's going to be our ending result here. The fact that this limit will go towards positive infinity. So this should clarify any issues that you might be having at this point with limits at infinity in terms of polynomial functions.
Made with Doodlecast Pro.